Hello everyone and welcome back to the follow-up video that follows up my Sunday live stream. And this is the picture that we started to color on Sunday using Derwent Inktense. And it is a page from my book, Flowers and Flyers. And I thought that I would show you some of the things that I've done since we closed the Sunday stream and go on from there. For those of you who do know me, my name is Christine Aldridge, and I am your host for Adventures in Coloring with CLAldridge Art. One of the things that I did do is I deepened up the colors on the bird and just made the head a little blacker and the beak a little more yellow. I did the feet, finished up the colors. I did the gazing ball in shades of neutral gray and Payne's gray. And I worked my pencil as I put down my layers of color before I activated it with sort of a curved motion to give the impression that it was reflecting the sun, because if you remember correctly, we had established that the sun was coming from about this angle. It was hitting our bird and making his black head sort of give off that pretty blue-green sheen that a black feather does. And I also, and this was sort of a bit of a of a of an adventure in trying to make the leaves look sun dappled. So I used a variety of greens, tried to leave light spots and dark spots. Um, it worked kind of. Obviously, it's a technique that I'll have to practice with. Um, I did add some grass in the background, colored in the fence. Did my air yellow because I happen to like yellow for blank air. And then this is more of an impressionistic sky, just to give the idea that there is a blue sky up there. My transition isn't perfect, but coloring isn't perfect. And of course, I am very happy with the way that my white flower turned out, the white part of the daffodil and the golden daffodil, and of course the way that I was able to make it look like the sun was hitting part of the wood base of the gazing ball, and I added a little bit more orange to the bird's reflection in the bird bath. But I was very, very happy with how the center turned out. Back up a little bit. But then I thought, well, what do I do with the frame? I don't want the frame to dominate the central image. So I knew I wanted to keep it neutral, and I decided on a neutral. I wanted to make it look like it was carved wood. So I picked out a variety of colors. For the main flower, I used amber. I believe this is my amber pencil. And to do this, I simply, to color them in, and I'll zoom you down here. To color them in, and I'll start with this one up here because it's easier for me to reach. I just basically put a little bit of the ink in the center, and then I used just a little bit of it and then went around the outside edges with the pencil, because remember that Derwent Inktense is, it's ink, so you're going to make it move around. You don't necessarily need to coat the whole thing. And what I was trying to do here by doing it this way is to let the center of each petal be a little bit lighter so that it would look like you know, like curved carving. And so I did this all the way around. Just like this. Trying to make sure I'm still in frame. And that I'm not pushing my pencils off the back side of my desk. And I had commented in a stream earlier this week that it was I had gotten to a point where I had to actually sharpen one of my precious Derwent Inktense pencils, and that it caused me physical pain to do so because, of course, they're pure pigment, and so anything that you sharpen away, it's like, it's like you could color an entire picture with the amount that you end up sharpening away. But don't worry, I captured it in a special little container. Oops, there I go off screen again. And I don't know what I'll do with those shavings. I'll figure out a oh, and there I go again off the top of the page. I'll figure out a use for them. I always do, since I am the mother of invention when it comes to coloring supplies. Okay, and then just to add a little variety, although it isn't very much variety, I used the saddle brown to do the littler feather or littler flower in here. Now, this really doesn't, it's not really that different of a color that it makes that big of a difference, but it makes me feel like I'm doing a little better with my color selections. So I just go around the outside and then just barely touch that inside one with the tip of my brush. And that's going to make it look a little bit lighter in the middle of each flower petal, which is what I want. And of course, if you get a little too much pigment on your palette, or on your brush, just brush it off a little bit onto a paper towel. And some people like to hold the paper towel in their hand, and you can always do that. I have a tendency to crush things that are in my hands inadvertently. I forget what it's for. Which is why I usually keep it on a plate, because I am much more comfortable on the plate. Let me move these pencils out of the way so I can get the plate a little bit closer here. I am also trying, because it was pointed out to me in my do-it-yourself watercolors video that I just posted earlier this week, that my camera the frames were a little bit stop and start. And that happens when I try to record when something else is running. I don't have a hugely powerful computer system, so I have to make sure that there's nothing else running in the background when I record, and I'm not always that patient. So I know that that is somewhat distracting, so I'm trying to record this. I normally record at 30 frames per second, and so I've downgraded it to DVD movie uh, uh, format, which records at 24 frames per second. So hopefully that is going to be a little bit better on stopping that stop and start motion. We shall see. I am still getting encoding overload signals on my system. I only have a third generation Intel system, and of course now, or processor, and now we're up to the 8th generation. Excuse me. But hopefully the picture is clear, the focus is good, the sound works, and you can see what I'm doing. That is the important part. Okay, so that is how you do the wood flower. And as you can see, it's already starting to dry. Once Inktense is activated, it doesn't really move around very much. So then, for the center slats, I did a combination of tan, that's the subtle brown, and let's see where my tan pencil is, that's the amber. We just used that. Here is the tan, which is number 1720, and the saddle brown, which is number 1740. And just in case you want to know, the amber that I was using in the flower is number 1710. So, for these, I just colored them very lightly all over with the tan. And I'll just do a couple of them here. And then I use the saddle brown, which is just a slightly darker shade, and tried to add in some wood texture. And then I also added just a little bit around the outer edges of both of these, just to give it sort of a shadow, like a drop shadow, so that it looked like it was a little more three-dimensional, like a curve. Once again, wood grains are not perfect, and so you can be, you can just be as creative or even as uncreative as you want. There's nothing wrong with straight coloring, and you don't have to do all this blending and shadowing and doing all of that to get a good result. You just color however you feel most comfortable. And I got a little bit out of the line there, but the world will not come to an end, and the coloring police will not come to my door. Or yours. I do want to give a special shout out to a very, very special lady who, recognizing my plight on Sunday, I was having some real trouble with getting my eyes to focus after sort of a day of, streaming and modding for other channels and generally participating in YouTube. And so she asked me basically if I thought that moisturizing my eyes would help. And I said, yeah, I think that is exactly the problem. I do have dry eyes and they are irritated. And so she, sweet thing that she is, and knowing by now that the person that I'll look after least is usually myself. I This, by the way, is oak. So now I'm keeping in the wood family, 1730. Anyway, to make a long story short, um, Shara Craig, you are just an angel. She sent me, bless her heart, eye drops. Um, and they're great. They are absolutely great. They work. I have been using them for 2 days now. They are called Refresh Optive Advanced, and they have really helped with the transition between looking at my small phone screen for my Instagram and uh, coloring under, somewhat harsh light and switching back and forth all day long to the computer, reading emails and posts and things like that. And it's just really, really helped to help my eyes to be able to maintain focus all day long. And when somebody gives you a gift like that, it's just incredibly thoughtful. And and I think that they just deserve all the hugs and wonderful things that I can say about them. Um, okay, so that was just a light layer to lay in the background of that oak. And that's going to give us this slightly darker than the amber effect. And I do try to keep my brushwork along a particular grain as opposed to going this way and this way and that way, this way and then that way kind of thing. Because I think that that also, if there are any pencil strokes left behind, they work well with the wood grain idea. Okay, so even when that dries, that is, as you can see, they're a little flat looking as opposed to these. And now these have been shaded, and the way that I did that was my sepia brown pencil, or sepia ink, which is the Inktense number 2010. And this you really do have to be very, very sparing with. It is just a tiny laydown of color because, as are all the sepia pencils, including I did try it a couple of ways. I tried shading with the regular Prismacolor, and I do use the regular Prismacolor on the inside, but it wasn't, because what I want this to do is sort of spread out and darken up the oak part as well. And I couldn't do that with the precision of the wax pencil. So I used the Inktense to help sort of aid the process. And you don't want to go all the way around each petal. You just want to go maybe halfway, adding a little bit of the ink, because what'll happen is you can drag it the rest of the way around with your brush. And even at that, it's probably a little more intense than it would appear in real life, but it's the effect I'm going for, and I want to fool your eye into thinking it's three-dimensional. And so that is how that works. So just a little bit around the outside of a couple of these. I'll just do these two. And my neighbor did stop by, the one whose wife is ill. As it turns out, she is fighting what is looking to be a losing battle. Um, and of course, I feel bad for him. He stopped by to say thank you, that I, went over and pulled his door closed. He had a lot of things on his mind. He'd run back into the house because he'd forgotten something and left his door open. And of course, he didn't return again for pretty much 36 hours. So he was grateful. Um, but she does have lung cancer and COPD, and is fighting toward the end. But they have been married for 46 years. I had no idea, and so needless to say, he is, bless his heart, he's just sort of hanging in there. Okay, so we do that, and that looks a lot darker than it actually is right now. It will dry a little bit lighter, and then, just for the sake of it, I do drop just a tad here in the corners, just not a lot, just a little, just to sort of darken up these corners. Because I'm kind of a stickler about stuff like that. I like my wood to be shaded. Okay. And thank you all for all the kind things that you've had to say about some of my recent videos. I am trying to make sure that my content is something interesting for you guys to look at, and hopefully to apply to your own work. If I've discovered anything that you find helpful, then yay me. And okay, I love my Inktense. Oh, but oh my, over in Connie's stream. Connie is CB, CEEBEE, and it's CB's. Oh, I'll put a link in. CB's coloring, and I don't remember, uh, but CB. We all know Connie, or many of us know Connie. If you don't know Connie, I will put a link in for you. Um, she was coloring a picture the other day, and she was using, or yesterday I think, she was using the Spectrum Noir liquid ink. It's the same ink that Spectrum Noir puts in their glitter pens. you know, the ones that you can buy as pens, but it's in little pots and you can apply it with a brush. And everybody in the room was like, "What is that?" And we all rushed off to Amazon to add it to our list warehouse. So that was pretty funny. I really enjoyed that. Okay, all right. So now I've added a little bit of dimension to that. And so then the flower part, more the interior flower part, I have the same sepia Prismacolor pencil. Whatever pencil set you have, use your sepia color or any shade of brown that you like to shadow with. You don't have to use sepia. You can use dark chocolate brown. You can use whatever that you like. But this is my PC 948. And so all I'm really going to do here is go around, and notice that it's not super sharp um, because I don't want it to leave a, and I'm being very, very light with it, I don't want it to leave a dark spot. It's a super powerful pencil, and I want it to appear more as shading than um, as a pencil stroke. So that's why I leave it a little bit dull, so that I can then use it to sort of fade out a very subtle bit around the edges of this flower, which sort of makes it stand up. So it stands up as a center part of the other flower. And then just for good measure, I just go in and do exactly the same thing, just very lightly, creating just a small bit of shadow really between each of the petals. Just basically coloring right along the lines. Maybe just a tad to the one side of each line. Just exactly like that. So it sort of makes it stand up a little bit more. And that is how that is done. Adding dimension to your coloring work. And it doesn't matter what order you do it in. I can do the petals first. I can do the centers first. Um, I just have a tendency to do it in the same order every time because that way I don't forget where I am. When you're shading, it can sometimes be fairly easy to forget where you are, and nobody wants to post an Instagram post and then notice what they missed, although many of us do that, myself included. And continuing on around, kind of rolling my pencil over so I try and keep a little bit of an edge, for whenever I hit one of those lines. And if you get one or two darker than the others, don't worry about that. because it's wood. It would be, the theory being that it would be hand carved and it wouldn't be perfect. So there are those, and you have now seen how that is done. I do hope that you do like the things that I do here on this channel. If you would like to, please like and subscribe to my channel. If you would like to follow me on social media, you can do that. I do have a Facebook artist page, a Facebook coloring group. I am on Instagram and on Twitter. I have a Pinterest presence. And of course, all 10 of the published books that I have are available through Amazon or as PDF instant downloads in my Etsy shop. Links are below. Drawings are available individually, and the Etsy shop is where you find my new art exclusives, those things that I am working on for my next book, but which are not yet in book form, are available as individual PDFs. Until we meet again, please color something pretty. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.